This week marks 5 years since the Supreme Court overturned a law that banned sports betting in most states. Since then, 33 states and the District of Columbia have legalized sports betting, and more states are poised to follow suit. When they do, they could see windfalls of hundreds of millions of dollars in tax revenue generated by gambling businesses. Still, some of the same lawmakers who advocated for legalized betting are now looking to tighten regulations. Danny Funt joins me now. He's a freelance contributor at the Washington Post. Danny, give us a sense of how much sports betting has become a part of American life since that Supreme Court decision.
It's incredible just how quickly sports betting has swallowed sports in so many different ways. It's truly inescapable if you're just an average fan who wants to watch a game or read about sports. Sports betting is everywhere. Last year, $94 billion were wagered illegally on sports. A lot of media companies have partnerships with sportsbook operators. There are in-person sports books where you can bet at a lot of sports venues, arenas, stadiums, you name it. And it's stunning how quickly a illegal activity that was fiercely opposed by all of the major leagues and the NCAA has become a fixture in American sports.
So if it's a fixture now, let's total up some of the ways that's affected us. First, since we started with the sports, how does it affect athletes and coaches and the people who have to actually participate in the sports that are being bet on in such vast sums?
Well, when it comes to professionals, just recently, about a half dozen NFL players were suspended, 3 of them for all of next season because they were found to have been betting on sports, which the leagues are very concerned with prohibiting. But beyond that, I think there's this, anytime something strange happens in a game or there's an odd call by a referee, inevitably you're going to hear fans say, aha, the game is fixed. The refs have a bet that they're trying to look after. And that alone, I think, is damaging, or at least something that a lot of people are concerned about. And then perhaps more seriously, just recently, there have been a few scandals in college sports, and college athletes and people affiliated with teams are seen as particularly vulnerable when it comes to some of the problems that come with legalized sports betting. So that's certainly caused a lot of hand-wringing on college campuses and with some lawmakers.
And now I'm going to ask a question for which I'm sure there is no quantifiable answer. But when money's on the line, people get a little fevered. Is there any way to measure whether, now that money is coursing through professional sports, the fans and the affection for teams has gotten more fevered?
There's no doubt that bettors watch more sports and consume more information about sports than the average fan. I think anyone who's had a bet on the line knows you're leaning a little bit more forward in your seat when you're watching the third quarter of some mid-season NBA game. So that's definitely one of the reasons why the leagues and their broadcasting partners have been so enthusiastic about partnering with sports books. They also want to wet their beaks and get a piece of the action if companies are making money off of their product. But yeah, there's no doubt about it that with betting comes more interest in sports, more curiosity in the minutia of sports that the average fan might not care about, and some problems as well.
And so the final question is about those problems. What do we know about the levels of addiction, and what problems are most on the radar screen of lawmakers trying to curb some of these excesses?
Addiction is just a fact of life when it comes with betting, and calls to some of these gambling addiction hotlines are up in all of the states that have legalized sports betting. Young people are known to be more susceptible to betting addiction, and that's one of the reasons why advertising targeting young people is very controversial and caused a lot of concern, even among sports books that are trying to rein in some of that advertising. Because, from a business standpoint, it makes sense that you want to target people in their 20s or even younger. But from a ethical or societal standpoint, that's alarming to a lot of people. Absolutely.
Danny Funt, freelancer for the Washington Post. Thanks a lot for being with us.
Thank you.